I guess that was my warm-up, having OBS fail on me. So this right here, which you probably can't see because this is not how it's supposed to be done. The OBS should be working and recording, but it is not. I just went through 20 minutes and then found out there's no file. There's no file. It didn't actually create a video file. So, here we are. Motherfucker. Illuminati Unmasked. Everything you need to know about the New World Order is the name of this book by Johnny Cerrucci. He is not trustworthy. As far as his motives, like what he tries to steer the conversation to, I like the information that he's providing, that it's secondhand, stuff that he's actually gathered as far as data, but as far as his conclusions and his way of steering things, I do not like at all. So we'll go with the raw data today. Chapter 19, the Golden Rule. He who owns the gold makes the rules. So this Illuminati Unmasked is basically talking about the Jesuits. Basically saying that the Rome is still an empire. It never left. It controls the world. It just rebranded itself as a religion and took over the whole damn world. And I don't know if you know the history of what popes think about our country. They hate it. We're reformationists, according to them, which is true because we are the ones that broke away from the church. Our founding fathers came here to escape religious prosecution and other things. And they want us dead, basically. The oath of the Jesuits is pretty disgusting. The Jesuit oath, the counter-reformation war, which is still ongoing. I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, not the way they intend. The liberals just meant liberating themselves. Back in the day when the word meant what it meant, they're not talking about liberals, they're talking about people who are liberating themselves from tyranny. As I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate forever their execrable race. Gee, that sounds enough like Planned Parenthood. That when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisoned cup, the strangulation cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed so to do by any agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. That doesn't really sound very Christian-like, does it? It doesn't really sound like when they're going to use Jesus' name, and that it would be logical that those two things would line up together. It seems like the antithesis, doesn't it? So here we go. The golden rule, he who owns all gold makes the rules. You can roll your eyes now because you've heard that a million times. Of the outward exhibition of a contempt of riches. To prevent the seculars from charging us with covetousness, it would be occasionally proper to refuse the small alms which are offered for services performed by the society. From those, however, who are entirely devoted to us, it is best to accept even the smallest offerings, lest we exhibit avarice by admitting of none but large gifts. That was from Secreta Monita, which is actually what the Jesuit rule book is. Like if you were a Freemason, you'd have your set of death, fucking destruction, and mayhem fucking agenda guidelines, and that's what the Jesuits have. So here's the quote: "Gold is money. Everything else is credit," is attributed to J.P. Morgan himself whilst testifying in front of Congress back in 1912, shortly before his death. It was exactly 100% correct then, and even more pertinent today. Morgan actually said, "Money is gold, nothing else." In 1912, Congress was rarely lied to, if ever. Whereas today, hearing the truth is as rare as Whereas today, the truth is as rare as hen's teeth. Please recall our past Federal Reserve Chairman, Ben Bernanke, because it's Ben Bernanke, yeah, as he lied to Congress when he replied, "No," when asked if gold was money. That was from Bill Holter. Okay, now here is where I want to start, really get into this. Year of infamy. If there was a year where the enemies of America thoroughly took over her finances and thoroughly condemned the average working American to fiscal servitude, it would be 1913. So then they're saying how Ron Paul, let's see. Ron Paul recently told the Wall Street Journal, this is recently according to 2015, I suppose, I'd really like to repeal 1913. Why a whole year? 3 reasons. On February 3rd, 1913, the 16th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified. The amendment allows Congress to levy an income tax without apportioning it among the states per the Constitution, Article 1, Sections 2, 8, and 9. On May 31st, 1913, the 17th Amendment was declared part of the Constitution by Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan. It established the direct election of U.S. senators by popular vote, stripping the right away from the state legislators. On December 23, 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. This act grants a consortium of private banks legal authority to issue Federal Reserve notes. Yeah, that says a lot more than that, but okay. Most Americans have no idea that their powerful United States senators were originally chosen by state legislators. This gave the individual states standing against the Leviathan central government and provided a layer of insulation against corruption. Elihu Root was the Secretary of War for William McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt, as well as Secretary of State for Roosevelt. He was also the personal lawyer of steel magnate and robber baron Andrew Carnegie. Root led the way to give his masters direct access to U.S. senators and their long six-year terms in office. Okay, so here we go. The 17th Amendment also transferred the power of selecting interim U.S. senators from the state legislators and gave it to the state governor. Again, much easier to corrupt. But if the 17th Amendment was a treasonous coup, much more so the 16th. The very idea that the United States government has the right to take from 40 to 60% and more from your income before you even lay eyes on it via an income tax is itself completely unconstitutional. Not only is the intent in direct opposition to the Founding Fathers' document and ideals of this nation, but Bill Benson of Constitutional Research Associates claims he has proof the 16th Amendment was not ratified by the constitutionally required 3/4 of states. Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution defines the ratification process and requires 3/4 of the states to ratify any amendment proposed by Congress. There were 48 states in the American Union in 1913, meaning that affirmative action of 36 was necessary for ratification. In February 1913, Secretary of State Philander Knox proclaimed that 38 had ratified the amendment. In 1984, Bill Benson began a research project never before performed, gee, I wonder why, to investigate the process of ratification of the 16th Amendment. After traveling to the capitals of New England states and reviewing the journals of the state legislative bodies, he saw that many states had not ratified. Okay, right there. Fucking taxes don't exist. That should be the ruling right there. He continued his research at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. It was here that Bill found his golden key. The damning piece of evidence is a 16-page memorandum from the Solicitor of the Department of State, among whose duties is the provision of legal opinions for Secretary of State. In this memorandum, the solicitor lists the many errors he found in the ratification process. So, completely false on all counts. These 4 states are among the 38 from which Philander Knox claimed ratification. California, the legislature never recorded any vote on any proposal to adopt the amendment proposed by Congress. They didn't even have a record of it. Kentucky, the Senate voted on the resolution, but rejected it by a vote of 9 in favor and 22 opposed. I don't think you can make a mistake on that, what they believed in there. Minnesota, the state sent nothing to the Secretary of State in Washington. So I guess they just got up and said, well, then they think they're ratified. Oklahoma, the Senate amended the language of the 16th Amendment to have a precisely opposite meaning. So when this project was finished at the end of 1984, Bill had visited the capital of every state from 1913 and knew that not a single one had actually legally ratified the proposal to amend the U.S. Constitution. 33 states engaged in unauthorized activity of altering the language of the amendment proposed by Congress, a power that the states do not possess. I wonder what they are trying to hide. Since 36 states were needed for ratification, the failure of 13 to ratify was fatal to the amendment. This occurs within the major first three defects tabulated in defects in ratification of the 16th Amendment. Even if we were to ignore defects of spelling, capitalization, and punctuation, we would still have only 2 states which successfully ratified, and that's from Bill Benson. There's more. One organization. So before we get too far, if you haven't realized just yet that we have been fucked since 1913 and it hasn't even been valid, and you don't want to just grab your pitchfork and your freaking your tiki torch and go run into the fucking Capitol, then you're brain dead or you drink too much tap water. Okay, stop getting injected with vaccines that make you fucking retarded. One organization says there is no law on the books whatsoever that requires a private American citizen to file a tax return. And they have staked $50,000 to the assertion with no winners. What they did win were several IRS agents turned whistleblower like Joe Bannister and Sherry Jackson. As a result of their integrity, both have been heavily persecuted and prosecuted. Joe Bannister was charged with tax fraud after a brutal court battle in 2000. You hear the word brutal? Is it ever fun to have these assholes look, fucking after your freaking your life, your way of providing for your family? Bannister was acquitted, by the way, yeah. And so in April 2001, email between a Department of Justice lawyer named D. Leonardo, who had worked with Bannister while Bannister was working at the IRS. The guy worked at the IRS. And Ron Semino, the chief of the Western Division of the Department of Justice's Tax Division, showed that the government viewed Bannister to be the most visible personality in what many people today call the tax honesty movement. How about the stop fucking taxing us unlawfully movement? The jury saw no crime in what Bannister was doing. 2 of the jurors who spoke with APFP right after the trial related the thinking that had led to their decision. God damn it. They said the false tax return charges were non-starters with the jury. Means they wouldn't even proceed with anything because there was nothing there to do. There's nothing there to see. The jury saw that the IRS might have disagreed with the proposition. The jury saw that I have to pause. The jury saw that the IRS might have disagreed with the position of Bannister on the tax returns. However, the tax returns contained no false information. The jurors said they were surprised when the testimony part of the case ended, since they had yet to hear any evidence of a crime. They said the evidence showed that Bannister was honest, straightforward, credible, believed in what he was doing, and was trying to follow the law, meaning the actual law. They also believed that Bannister was honestly trying to get answers, but the government consistently refused to answer his questions and address his concerns. And that's from Payman Mohabbadataba Freedom Law School. Sadly, he is the exception, not the rule. A system whose existence depends upon taxation will not stand by while whistleblowers and rebels strike at its heart. If Americans learned their government had no legal authority to summarily tax their personal incomes, businesses are different, I'm afraid. Yeah, but they're not doing what they should be doing there either. The entire system would collapse under the weight of parasitic fat cats. Both Joe Bannister and Sherry Jackson were helping the private citizens understand the tax trap in their individual finances, as well as giving open public classes about the truth of progressive tax code. The progressive tax code is a weapon that can be fine-tuned to attack specific portions of America's populace, middle class, which is why a flat tax will never be allowed by the traitors and subversives currently running our government. And it is extremely helpful to Luciferians, globalists, and papists. When you say papists, say the fucking Pope. Say Rome. Say Roman Empire. Say the Jesuits. Say the Society of Loyola. That's the fucking deep state. And papists who despise America's middle class. Sherry Jackson was convicted of tax fraud in 2008. Yeah, they had to make an example. Jackson was heavily prosecuted, and her health began to fail, and her in prison, not just taking all our money, in prison, when Texas Congressman Ron Paul came to her aid. Okay, we're going to just kind of... We're going to go a little further down. Yeah, I don't care about that guy either. Let's see. Banksters rule. The most powerful way to enslave and steer a nation is to control her finances, and on that definition alone, America has been enslaved since 1913, and it's not been valid. The battle for a central bank has been waged from America's inception, and few in the founding generations were for it. Having witnessed the excesses and criminal activities of powerful banksters elsewhere in the world as well as throughout history. Alexander Hamilton, that fag, was a driving force behind both strong centralized government and central bank. Yeah, we know. That's why he got shot. There was always a group of men in American politics who were not opposed to the evil mercantilist system in principle. They recognized it as a wonderful system for accumulating power and wealth as long as they could be in charge of it. Being victimized by it was another matter. Yeah, did you ever notice that? Did you ever notice how Congress likes to do things that fucking destroy our country? Because they're doing it on purpose, because that's the agenda, but it doesn't affect them, so they live in a bubble. These men, led by Alexander Hamilton and his fellow Federalists, strived to implement an American version of British mercantilism as soon as the Revolution was over. So basically, let's just do the same thing we did that we just tried to run away from. In doing so, they were traitors to the American Revolution and the worst kind of corrupt, power-seeking political scoundrels. The Virginia statesman John Taylor of, it says Carolina, I guess it's Carolina, smoked out these political scoundrels in an 1823 book entitled New Views of the Constitution of the United States. And I'm not going to go into the rest of the crap, but making extensive use of the recently published Secrets of the blah blah blah, who attended the Constitutional Convention, Taylor shredded the false notion of nationalists like Hamilton and later Clay. Yeah, whatever. So focusing on Hamilton as a chief culprit, Taylor explained how the nationalists, don't get that word confused with that, everything's opposite with these people, right? Up is down, black is white, male is female, yeah, all that shit, right? So nationalists, they were not nationalists. They were hiding behind it. They were hiding behind it like a shield. They were not nationalists, okay? Don't get that confused with what people calling themselves as being nationalists with now. That would be a dirty, bad mistake, and it would only hurt you if you did, and your way of comprehending the world. Did try at the Constitutional Convention to create a completely centralized government, but failed. For example, he quotes Hamilton himself at the convention as proposing a form of government such that all laws of the particular states, contrary to the Constitution or laws of the United States, to be utterly void. Hear that? The United States federal government makes all the rules, and if your state rules, they don't apply. They only apply if they're the same as the federal government. That's what he's saying. And the better to prevent such laws being passed, the governor of each state shall be appointed by the general government, that means the federal, and shall have a negative upon the laws about to be passed in the state of which he is governor. So he not only has no power, he has negative power in controlling his own home, his own home turf. The people that he was, supposedly there to represent. How is this representative? How is any of this a representative government if it's being completely manned and operated by a federal terminal, by a federal helm? Everything in the same wheelhouse. Taylor understood that the reason why Hamilton and other Federalists wanted a centralized or consolidated government was that states' rights would forever stand in the way of their accumulation of power and wealth throughout the mercantilist system that they hoped to impose on America. Therefore, states' rights must be crushed in the eye of Hamilton and his followers. Sound familiar? Sound like communism? Okay. Despite occasional lip service paid to the notion of states' rights. Yeah, they bullshitted. Just like when Pelosi and Schiff got up in front of everybody and said, we really hate to do that. It really pains us to do this. It's really, we don't want to have to try to impeach this president. Fuck you. You are fucking drooling on your nuts. Perhaps we can be a little less judgmental of Colonel Hamilton when we think of a nation with no central government and no common national currency. It would be like traveling across old. This is bullshit. Okay, this is why I wanted you to hear first the thing about the gold, and I'm gonna go back to that and repeat it again because this is fucking bullshit. What he's saying, and I'm gonna finish what he says, and then I'm gonna comment. I'm going to start again. Perhaps we can be a little less judgmental of Colonel all of a sudden, now he's Colonel Hamilton, when we think of a nation with no central government and no common national currency. It would be like traveling across old Europe, each state acting as its own sovereign nation with different forms of currency of different values, completely vulnerable to a small but serious host of threats. Bullshit! I can't even finish that without saying bullshit. Here's the thing. If gold is money and money is gold, then the thing that is your receipt that says you own it, doesn't matter what fucking color it is, doesn't matter what fucking type of paper it's printed on, it's still a receipt for fucking gold. And that's the standard, right? Gold is money. Nothing else. Nothing else. So if you have a piece of paper, this guy's talking about in terms of fiat. In terms of fiat currency that is absolutely fucking unlawful and illegal and horrible. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That has nothing to do with value, with assessed value, with perceived value of something. Perceived wealth is gold. So if you have a note that says, I am entitled to X amount of gold, here is that note, here is this note, so now you're entitled to that amount of gold. It doesn't matter if it came from fucking Serbia, or if it came from fucking Turkey, or if it came from Afghanistan, or if it came from fucking France. It doesn't fucking make a difference. It doesn't matter where it came from, it's still entitling that person to that amount of gold if he presents that note. So this makes no fucking sense whatsoever. It's your receipt to say, hey, instead of carrying around all this shit, here's the paper, you go collect it if you want it. However, if Hamilton was attempting to create a Federal Reserve as America's first central bank, then he was indeed a traitor. Though the intent of the bank was to facilitate government finances, Hamilton had another goal in mind, to function as a commercial bank. At the time of the Revolution, there were barely any banks in the colonies. Britain had used its authority to protect its own banks and prevented the development of financial rivals. Hamilton's vision was to create a central source of capital that could be lent to new businesses and thereby develop a nation's economy. So in some ways, the first bank prefigured the Federal Reserve. Yeah, it sure as hell did. The first bank was a central bank. It was a 20-year charter. So as soon as we were done, foreign powers in the city of London once again had control over us. There wasn't another fucking skip of a fucking 10 minutes time before the revolution was declared over and they had this fucking central bank in place to fuck us again. And then the 20-year charter just means that they had to renew it, right? But it doesn't mean that we weren't just switched right back. You know, Hamilton was in the era of George Washington, and he finally convinced him that would be the best thing for a government that's getting started, and it's on shaky legs. It's just learning to walk. and then some more bullshit by Johnny Cerrucci, because I just talked about the other bullshit when he talked about going across Europe and having all these notes that are subject to so many threats. Fuck you. Regardless, he was killed by a traitor of different stripe, Aaron Burr, who tried to enlist the British to start his own country in America. That is absolutely fucking false. Aaron Burr was vice president at the time he shot Hamilton to death, okay? And what he's talking about were the sympathizers, not the British government. He's talking about sympathizers that wanted to see America because they were also reformationists that wanted to see us prosper because they hated the country that they were stuck in, but they couldn't get out. Oh, God. These people are fucking... So even though this guy is presenting information and facts, this is the Johnny Cerrucci we're talking about. This guy who hides behind the shield of being a Marine, which, by the way, if you listen to his logic about why somebody's a Jesuit, like if they went to a school... If they were sent there by their parents for 2 years, like with the president, all of a sudden they're fucking they're agents of the Vatican. What the fuck? I went to Catholic school for kindergarten. I went to St. Paul's Assumption. Does that mean that I'm a fucking Roman fucking agent? Does that mean that I'm a Vatican assassin? He's a fucking retard. You know, the fact that he went and he got his he enlisted in the Marines. I don't know if he was an officer or not. He sounds like an officer. He sounds like a fucking pampered little bitch. His oath, his swearing in makes him closer to what he's calling out than anybody who just went to a school for 2 years. He is closer to the heart of the Jesuits and the Roman Empire by being in the military, by being in the Marines, and by being associated with those people who were all controlled by the people that he's complaining about. So he can suck a dick, and he probably does. Oh, okay. Here's another part. No, all right. So things about. Yeah, we're gonna go. The Congress shall have the power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. That is gospel. You understand? So it says, as far as the central bank was concerned, several founders were overwhelmingly against the idea, and having a standardized national currency was the exclusive power of Congress under the Constitution. The Congress shall have power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin. So foreign coin coming in, if it's not done by weights and measures, the metal, if they're not talking about actual coinness, and then they're talking about just in the sense of figure of speech. Oh, what the hell just happened? Oh, okay, that's all right. Let's see where that went backwards. Okay. Congress's power to coin money is exclusive under Article 1, Section 10. The states are not permitted to coin money, emit bills of credit, or make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Whereas the prohibitions on the states are clear and detailed, Congress's grant of power under the coinage clause is open-ended. Nonetheless, certain elements are clear. First, Congress is granted the authority to coin money, which authorizes Congress to coin money from precious metals such as gold and silver. Under the Articles of Confederation, the power to coin money was a concurrent power of Congress and the states. And the states, and the states, and the states. To create a more standardized monetary system and reduce the cost of running mints, the Constitution granted this power to Congress exclusively. Yeah, there was a time when every state had its own money that they issued. It was called People's Bank, and it was beautiful. We were never there for that, but it would be nice if we could get back there again. Because again, it doesn't matter what the fuck it looks like, as long as it is able to be turned in for gold. And if that's the way it is, and that's the contract that was written, and that's the promissory whatever, I don't want to say no because that's not it's a slightly different thing as a promissory note. But if that's what you're using, then there you go. There you go. Then it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter if it has a different face on it. So the elimination of the state's power to coin money and the exclusive grant to Congress provoked controversy because the power to coin money was traditionally understood as a symbol of political sovereignty. Second, Congress is empowered to regulate the value of coins struck domestically and to set the value of foreign coins. This is from Todd Zywicki's The Heritage Guide to Constitution. We don't need to go any further to understand that it is not the responsibility of a central bank to coin money. Sadly, there are far worse reasons than that to seek the death of the Federal Reserve. The first and not the last central bank. Although Hamilton was able to get a compromise, central bank signed into law by... And although Hamilton was able to get a compromise... I don't get that. A compromise central bank signed into law by George Washington, it was not renewed by Congress when the charter expired. I hate when this does that. Okay. The first Bank of the United States was modeled after Bank of England. Oh, good. Because, we weren't just trying to get away from this fucks, right? We didn't just jump right back into bed with them again. No, we didn't do that. Thanks, Hamilton. For example, it was partly owned by foreigners. It was mostly owned by foreigners. By foreigners, they didn't at that time, they didn't even consider the British foreigners because they were from, they were of European descent themselves. That's where you say, no, bullshit, they were all foreigners. They had representative banks here, like in New York and stuff like that, but they were all City of London fat cats. Kuhn and Loeb, all those guys. Who shared in it. Oh, and Oppenheimer was a big bank back then too. In its profits, it was not solely responsible for the country's supply of banknotes. It was responsible for only 28% of the currency supply. State banks accounted for the rest. See that? That's the difference too. Besides, between the Federal Reserve now and what they had as far as a central bank then. The central bank at that point was only 20% of the game. 80% of it was still the states still doing their own thing. Beautiful. 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 State banks accounted for the rest. Okay, several founding fathers bitterly opposed the. Fuck me. Several founding fathers bitterly opposed the bank. Thomas Jefferson saw it as an engine for speculation, financial manipulation, and corruption. In 1811, its 20-year charter expired and it was not renewed by Congress. And we have a lot of really awesome people to thank for that. There are several needlessly embellished Jefferson anti-bank quotes floating around the blogosphere that cannot be sourced, but his probable sentiments are more than enough. Thomas Jefferson did not like bankers. Okay, there you go. In setting the record straight, the Monticello Project, a proud member of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, UNESCO, the fucking scum of the earth, the fucking army of the Vatican. Yeah, it's true. The collection of the nations that they overthrow and they crush and then they establish their own shit in. That's what the United Nations is. It's a fucking collective. It's the Borg. Okay. A statement Jefferson made in a letter to John Taylor in 1860. A statement Jefferson made in a letter to John Taylor in 1816. This is what they're saying. This is what the UNESCO is saying. UNESCO also, by the way, took over and actually occupies Pennsylvania. They took over Philadelphia, and they basically are an evil force, and like with their own embassy right on top of where the Liberty Bell is, all that stuff. They have taken the symbols of our nation and they've made them a fucking war zone, basically. That's their war room, I should say. And I sincerely believe with you that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. Jefferson's comment to John Wales Epps, bank paper must be suppressed and the circulation media must be restored to the nation to whom it belongs. After the dust settled on the death of the first central bank, banking agents quickly went to work building a second until they ran into a wall of old hickory. This is my guy right here. Andrew Jackson. Remember that name? Love it forever. And then be just as pissed off as he would be to have his fucking face on one of their notes. To Andrew Jackson, the president runoff between himself and sitting president John Quincy Adams was simply the latest stage of a historic struggle against privilege that ran back to Magna Carta. Magna Carta is in the 1200s, okay? That was what they consider the founding constitution of Europe, right? That was where all the other things were based off after that. And that was during the Protestant Reformation and all that wonderful, beautiful stuff. Then when we started saying "fuck you, church," which was still active Roman Empire, and their little monarchies that they set up around the world to control. Because let me ask you something: if you're a monarchy and you imposing your will upon the people and you're claiming divine right to rule, well, who gives you that divine right? Would that not be, I don't know, the self-proclaimed God's representatives on earth? So who really is in control? Yeah, exactly. They don't have to have their own freaking standing army, which the Vatican does. Not just the Swiss Guard either. I'm talking about they have the UN, they have a bunch of secret, and then they have the Jesuits, which are basically the CIA for the Vatican, and they are who the CIA was modeled after. So we'll go right to, because since I've been talking a while, let's go back to the beginning here. To Andrew Jackson, the presidential runoff between himself and the sitting president John Quincy Adams was simply the latest stage of a historic struggle against privilege that ran back to the Magna Carta and included the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century, the English Revolution of the 17th, and the American Revolution of the 18th. At each stage, the people seized more of what by right belonged to them. Listen to that. Right? But we are alive. We want to be able to just not be fucked with. We want to be left alone. Stop trying to fuck us every time you come nigh us. Stop. At each stage, the people seized more of what by right belonged to them from those who intended that power remain to the monopoly of the few. Yeah, they regained what they should have always had as being natural living beings from those who intended to keep it for themselves. Andrew Jackson, His Life and Times, H.W. Brands. The Jacksonian presidency has been slandered due to his uncharitable treatment of American Indians, but Jackson was a man familiar with what would happen to those at the mercies of Indians during wartime. Plus, there is no Trail of Tears. There's absolutely zero evidence that there was a death march. It's a lie. It's a fucking lie. In many ways, Indians at war acted as if they were on a jihad. Yes, and they were being funded by the British, the Rothschilds banks, and France. So let's just get that clear. The Indians' resistance grew more sophisticated. I'm probably Spain too. They discovered that the Europeans belonged to more than one tribe, with their French as hostile to the English as either were to any of the Indians. Some Indians sided with the French, others with the English, and when the French and English went to war, as they did once a generation, the various Indian tribes exploited the opportunities to their own advantage. Yeah, you know what? They also killed each other. They killed their own. They would turn the Five Nations was like a death squad that would go around and just gather up and kill all the weaker tribes and just murder their families on down, like babies, everything, and that was sanctioned and paid for by the British. So happy days, right? So where are we at? We gotta stop at some point because this is just going on and on and on, and they're just gonna get more and more excited. Yeah, let's just call it. We're gonna call it now. Okay, so preview of things that come, and now that I know that this camera actually does pick up this screen, I know this is kind of lame, very low tech, but my OBS, I can't figure out why it won't record and store the video file. So I wasted a lot of time today thinking that I was getting recorded and I wasn't. So this is just straight out of my my Kindle, but we're gonna go ahead and show you that I do buy my books, right? There's a lot of good things in here. But what we're going to tackle next, because I brought it up today, is Andrew the Great by M.S. King, Michael S. King. This takes forever to load these things. It's ridiculous. Okay, so apparently I got to start it over too. So, boom. Nope. I don't know how to do that right. But anyhow, we're going to get into Andrew Jackson in great detail because I feel like the record needs to be set straight. I think that there's an awful lot of BS going on about his treatment of Native Americans, and basically it's all out of hatred because he killed a bank. He killed a movement to create a bank, and with him, all national debt was paid off for the first and only time in history. First and only time in history of this nation. He paid the national debt to zero before he left office. I know. And then what do they do? What do they do? Right after that, you have your Civil War. Not too much. I know there's a 30-year difference, but whatever. There's the Civil War, and right back into debt, right back into servitude, and the destruction of our Constitution by Abraham Lincoln. And I will get into that in a future video too, but I just want to preface this coming up next because I kind of left it open-ended. I didn't want to continue on with that other book because I don't know where it's going from that point because that's as far as I've actually read up to this point. But I want to get into this other section, and I'm going to bring this book back up that I've already read all of so I can easily more navigate the bullet points as far as what would be most important to talk about for Andrew Jackson. The whole book is great. It's not very long. It's about 151 pages, maybe 180. Yeah, 180 pages if I don't ever just read the freaking glossary or the index, but yeah, that's about it. And it's a great book by Michael S. King at Tomato Bubble, or you can just get it right on Amazon.com. Not plugging, I just think it's a great book. And I think once you start reading his stuff, you'll want to read all of it. Alright, so we're going to go from that. Have a great day! See the shirt? Fucking love it! Yes, I know. I could benefit from a backdrop. Until you run your own business where you make your own products, 37 of them to be exact, and you have a 3-year-old, you don't understand what happens to a home. Okay? It's impossible to keep up with. I work constantly. My wife runs that baby constantly. We don't always have time to tidy up. But yeah, I get it. I get it. Don't make cast aspersions. Okay? We're awesome people.